Hello, this is Jacqueline from Jack Knits, and today we're going to knit up this ribbed beanie hat. This is called the cartridge rib stitch. It is super stretchy. It has these nice deep crevices in the ribbing stitch, and it just knits up beautifully for a hat. We're going to add a fun little pom-pom to the top, so let's grab our materials and get started. All right, let's get started on this cartridge rib hat by taking a look at the materials that we're going to be needing for this. I'm going to be knitting this in the round, so I'm using a circular needle. Now this is a 16-inch long circular needle. It will comfortably fit the stitches that you need to do this in the round, and this is a size US 7 needle. For the yarn today, I'm using this worsted weight yarn. It's the Color Theory 2 Wands brand, and I really love this yarn. I've been using this a lot for projects. It works great for a hat. It's got a nice feel and knits really easily, but it's also great for like scarves and shawls because it's got such a nice drape to it. If you are interested in purchasing either the yarn or the needle, I will have a link in the description below the title of this video. You feel free to purchase those if you'd like. So let's get started with casting on for this. I've got two different sizes here. I've got a women's size and a teenage size. This women's size, I cast it on 65 stitches, and for the teenage size, it's 60 stitches. But know that the stitch pattern is a multiple of 5 stitches. So if you want to make a slightly bigger hat, just cast on either a multiple of 5 more stitches for your hat. If you want to make a little bit smaller hat, just subtract 5 stitches from your cast on. We're going to be using primarily knit and purl stitches for this entire project, so it is fairly easy to do. We're also going to be doing just a few decrease stitches for the crown of the hat, but I will explain easily how to do those. If you need a refresher on knitting or purl or how to cast on, I'm using the long tail cast on method for this hat. Feel free to refer to the videos again in the description below. I'll have a link to those videos that I made, which will give you a kind of a deeper description on how to do those knit and purl stitches and casting on. So let's start with casting on. I'm going to do the women's size hat, so let's cast on 65 stitches with the long tail method. Once I've casted on these 65 stitches, I'll come back and we will start with round 1 of our cartridge rib pattern. All right, let's get started with our 2-row repeat pattern for this cartridge rib hat. We are just going to jump right into the stitch. I'm not doing a different kind of a ribbing for the brim because this is already a ribbed hat. I'm just jumping right into the stitch, and the ribbing, it will be the same stitch for the entire length of the hat. All right, let's start with round 1. To start working in the round, when you are working with a circular needle, you're going to want to make sure that all of your cast on edge stitches are kind of pointed towards the center of your circle here, with your working yarn and tail coming off of the right side of your needle, and we're going to be knitting the stitches on the left side of your needle. So with your working yarn, we are going to start by doing a pattern of knit 3, then purl 1, and then knit 1. So it's a 5-stitch sequence. So let's start with those 3 knit stitches. Knit 1, knit 2, 3, then we're going to purl 1, and then another knit stitch. So that's 5 stitches, and now we're just going to continue to repeat that all the way around. So let's knit another 3, 1, 2, 3, purl 1, and then knit 1. One more time. Knit 3, 1, 2, 3, purl 1, and knit 1. So let's do that around the entire round, and then we'll jump to round number 2. All right, nearing the last couple of my 5-stitch sequence, knitting 3, purling 1, knit 1, and then here's my last one. Knit 3, purl 1, and knit 1. Okay, so now that we're at the end of the round, I want to make sure I add a stitch marker that's going to indicate for you when your round is complete and you can continue with the next round. All right, let's continue with round number 2, and that sequence is as follows. It's still a 5-stitch sequence. We're going to start by knitting 2 and then purling 3. So 1, 2, 3. Again, start over with that. Knit 2, 1, 2, and purl 3. 1, 2, 3. Knit 2 and purl 3. So that is round 2. I will complete that to the end of this round, and then you'll just start over with row number 1 and repeat those 2 rounds for as long as you need to for your hat. I'm going to come back and do a few rows. I'm just going to come back after a few just so you can kind of see how this rib stitch is looking after you've completed a few rounds. That way you can make sure that you're knitting, if you're following along, looks like mine and you're on the right track. So let me just work for a few rows, then we'll talk about how to measure and figure out how far to do this before we start the decreases. All right, how are we coming? If you're knitting along with me, your knitting should look somewhat like this, where this beautiful rib stitch is starting to take a shape here. We've got these nice columns of knit stitches and then these deep crevices of purl stitches. It really is a lovely ribbing stitch. And just so you know, I have a different video on using this same cartridge rib stitch to knit fingerless mittens. Those mittens are knitted flat, so the stitch pattern is a little bit different than when knitting in the round, but the outcome is the exact same, this nice cartridge rib. So if you're interested in working up those mittens in the same stitch, a link to that pattern and that video will be in the description below as well. Okay, so you're going to want to continue working these 2 row repeats for as long as we need to for the hat before we start doing the decreases. Now there's 2 different ways you can obviously knit this hat. You can do it just a straight hat with no folded over brim. If that is the case, you will want to, this is where I started my decreases here, you will want to knit for a total of about looks like 8 inches or so before we're going to do the decreases. Now, if you want to knit a folded over brim, which I think really looks attractive on this hat, you'll want to knit for a few inches longer. I think we've got about 10.5 inches to knit until we start the decreases on this hat. Then you'll have this nice extra length for that folded over brim. So continue your knitting those 2 rows until you get to that length. I will do the same and we'll jump back together when we start doing just a few rows of decreases and then the fun part of adding the fun pom-pom. So I'll see you in a bit. All right, I've been knitting for a little while and I have got to the point where I can start to do the decreases for the crown of the hat. So I've knitted this for 10.5 inches. That gives me enough room to do a nice little folded over brim, which looks really nice on this hat. So now we're going to do a couple decrease rows before we close up the top for the top of the hat. So I ended my rounds with a round number 2. That's important, so that will continue with our decrease round, will continue in the pattern of this stitch a bit. So my round number 1 for my decrease is going to look like this. We are going to do a knit 2 together and then do a knit 1, a purl 1, and a knit 1. So let's do that sequence together. To do a knit 2 together, we're going to take these 2 stitches, the very first 2 stitches in our sequence, and knit them together. So instead of just inserting your needle through one stitch, we're going to insert the needle through both of those stitches, through 2 together, and then knit those 2 together. So bring your yarn through both of those stitches as you knit and slide it off the needle, and that's going to give you 1 decrease, and that's a knit 2 together. Okay, so then after that we're going to do a knit 1, purl 1, and knit 1. We're kind of continuing in the pattern here of our stitch. And then when we get to these, the next sequence, we're going to start again with those knit 2 together. So knit those 2 stitches together, and then knit, purl, knit. Do it again. Knit 2 together, knit, purl, and knit. Let's do that all the way to the end of this round, and then we'll do another couple more rounds here. All right, here's our last sequence for this round number 1. We'll slip our marker. Now round number 2, we're actually not going to do any decreases in this round, but we're just going to kind of continue in our pattern for the next couple rounds actually. So now, since we did a decrease in every single 5-stitch sequence, we're now down to a 4-stitch sequence. So for round number 2 here, we're going to just do 1 knit stitch and then do 3 purl stitches for our 4-stitch sequence. So we're not doing any decreases this round, just knitting 1 and then purling 3. So knit 1 and purl 3, and let's do that all the way to the end of this round, and we'll do one more non-decrease round before we do another decrease. All right, slipping the marker, and we will start round 3 of our decrease rounds. This one does not include any decreases, but again, we're just following the existing pattern here. So for this round, we're going to knit 2, purl 1, knit 1, and we will do that through the end of the round. So let's start by knitting 2, purling 1, and knit 1. Knit 2, whoop, that last stitch was split a little bit. Knit 2, purl 1, knit 1, knit 2, purl 1, knit 1. All right, I'll do this till the end of the round, and then we'll do one more decrease round and then a couple more wrap-up rounds. Okay, for our last decrease round, before we just do a couple extra rounds at the end, we are going to actually incorporate a stitch called the purl 3 together, and this is going to actually, each one of those stitches is going to decrease our stitches by 2. So this is probably the most trickiest stitch of this whole pattern, but it's really not that difficult. Let's do it together. We're going to start this sequence with just a knit 1 again, and now we're going to take these next 3 stitches and purl all 3 of them together. So again, we'll bring our yarn to the front, and instead of just slipping your needle through 1 stitch, we're going to now slip that needle through 3 stitches. Okay, so now you've got your your needle through 3 stitches with your yarn in front, and we will grab that yarn and pull it through all of those 3 stitches and slide all 3 stitches off your needle. So those, now we took 3 stitches and just broke it down to 1 stitch. So it was a decreasing of 2 stitches. Let's do that again. We'll knit 1. Let's take all these 3 and purl them together. Bring our yarn to the front, insert through all 3 stitches, grab that yarn and bring it through. Whoops, see, sometimes you it misses and you gotta just start over again, but that's what makes this one a little tricky. Just make it through, it gets through all 3 of those stitches. There we go. Just takes a little effort, and do it kind of slowly to make sure that you're catching all 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3, grabbing that, bringing it through. There we go. Knit 1, purl 3 together. All right, I will finish up this round doing those stitches, and then we've got only 2 more rounds to go. All right, we completed that round with those purl 3 together. Now we've got 2 more rounds to go, and you can kind of notice it. I have very few stitches now left on my needle, and it's getting a little bit more difficult to knit because you have to keep scooching the stitches around because there isn't as enough stitches to really cover the length of my needle. But we only got 2 more rounds to go, and we can make it work. But if you prefer to not struggle with that a little bit these last couple rounds, you can switch to DPNs, double pointed needles, if you like. Just make sure it's a number 7 double pointed needle, and then just switch these stitches to 3 double pointed needles. If you're used to working with those, that's a great option. But if you don't have them or don't feel comfortable working with them, just keep following along, and we'll continue to just knit the next 2 with these circular needles. Okay, our next 2 rounds are going to be this. We're just going to do a knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1, all the way around for 2 rounds. So let's complete that up by just knitting 1, then purling 1, knit 1, purl 1, and we'll do that all the way. And again, you're going to have to kind of keep scooching your stitches because we don't have that many on here, but it'll work through to the end of this end of these 2 rounds. So I will meet you when I've completed these 2 more rounds of knit 1, purl 1s, and then we'll close at the top and add a pom-pom. Okay, so we've completed all the knitting of our hat now, and now we just need to close up the top, and we'll add a fun pom-pom to the top. So we're just going to take these live stitches on our needle, thread them onto a darning needle with our scrap yarn, and then cinch it close. Okay, and then add the pom-pom. So let's take your tail of your working yarn and give yourself a bit of a tail and cut it off. Then we will thread our yarn onto our darning needle. And you can remove the stitch marker now. Now we will just take our stitches one by one and slip them onto our darning needle, slipping them onto the working yarn here to remove all the stitches from our needle. Okay, so just one by one, slipping them off our needle. Kind of pull the yarn through and you get a few stitches on there. We'll do that all the way to the end of this round, picking up all of our stitches. All right, we've got them all onto our needle here. We can set down our knitting needle. Now just take your yarn and we're just going to pull this shut, close that up so you don't have any gap there. And then just to secure it a little bit more, you can take, with your yarn still on your needle here, just go through these last row of stitches one more time. You don't have to go through each stitch, but just kind of do another round of pulling this needle through, and that's just going to make sure that that gap doesn't open up again. Okay, when you're done with that, we can now stick our needle through the center of our hole, bring it to the inside. Okay, now we're going to add a pom-pom to the top of our hat. I buy these faux fur pom-poms through Amazon. The link to that is below in the description if you'd like to purchase them. They come in all sorts of wonderful, fun colors. We're going to use this rose color one for the top of this pom-pom. Now these come with this elastic little loop on the bottom. So I found that the easiest way to attach this to a hat that has one of these little loops on is to use a button on the inside of your hat. Now this is about a 3/4 inch size button, just a cheap plastic button. It doesn't matter what color it is because you're not going to see it. It's going to be on the inside of the hat. But we're going to sew this button on the inside and then loop that loop around the button. That's going to secure it nicely, and it's going to give you the option to remove that pom-pom if you ever need to wash the hat, or if you just prefer to wear it sometimes without the pom-pom. So let's sew this on here. Now I've got my thread already onto a large darning needle. However, this large needle is not going to fit through my holes of the button. So unfortunately at this time you're going to need a smaller needle to do that. So if you can find a smaller needle that has at least a big enough eye to fit your yarn through, that's what you're going to want to use to sew this button on. All right, just barely was able to get it through through that eye of the needle. Okay, now let's sew this button on. I like to not sew it right over top of the hole here. I want to just give it a little offset so I've got room to put my loop through the hole. So let's sew this button on. We're going to bring it through one of our holes of our button. And then just like with any sewing on a button, we're just going to go in and out of these holes of the button and secure that button to the inside of this hat. All right, that's about enough to secure it. Now you can just kind of loop around one of the loops on your button. We'll just secure it with a knot here. And you can trim this off. And now let's take this and secure it to the hat. Okay, and at this point you will need to have a crochet hook or something that you can help bring that loop through the center of your hat. I found it easiest to use a crochet hook. So we're going to insert our hook through the center of our hole here on top of our hat. Poke it out through the other side. We'll grab that loop and bring it to the inside of our hat. All right, so now that loop is on the inside. It's a pretty small loop, so it's not very very stretchy, but that's good because we like it to keep it nice and secure. Now we're going to take that loop and just wrap it around our button. So just with the crochet hook and your fingers, get it around that button. You want it to be nice and tight like that. Okay, so we looped it around the button. Now we've got the nice pom-pom on top. Isn't that cute? Oh, all right. Oh, isn't this fun? A beautiful hat. I hope you give this a try. It is a very simple ribbing hat that just is absolutely lovely and easy to knit up. So thanks for watching, everybody. If you like this video or like my channel, don't forget to subscribe and give me a thumbs up. That will help me be able to produce more and more of these types of videos all about knitting, and I also do crocheting too. So thanks for watching, everybody. Happy knitting.